what happens on closing day? We're going to talk all about what does happen in that room, and we're getting started right now. Hey, what's going on? I'm Emmett Dempsey, mortgage broker and owner of Treasure Coast Mortgage here in Port Saint Lucie, Florida, and welcome to another video. On this channel, we talk more about mortgages, the home buying process, and some cool things around Port Saint Lucie and the Treasure Coast and moving to Florida. So if you're new here, please think about subscribe. Okay, it's closing day. You're all done. You just walk in and get your keys, right? Not exactly. Well, there is a very specific process you have to go through at closing, and I'm going to kind of paint that out for you for folks who have never closed before and how that all works. By now, you've already gone through the mortgage process, and I assume that you are getting financing and buying a house. If you've already gone through, you've already signed a bunch of paperwork, a lot of disclosures, maybe electronically. I have a loan estimate video here, as well as a closing disclosure video here that you can check out to find out more about those documents, the loan estimate, closing disclosure. Okay. At closing, what's going to happen? You've already talked to your lender who said you're clear to close. Great. For them, that's kind of like the end of the underwriting process. But now it comes to closing process. What's going to happen is they do a final balance of the cash to close that you're required to bring to closing, and that's going to be the first piece. You're going to go to closing maybe a day or two before. And you're going to wire money over. Like, they don't accept cashier's checks. They certainly don't accept cash.
Do you accept cash?
You're gonna have to wire your funds and make sure that your wiring instructions are given to you by the title company or your lender, usually over the phone. These days, fax over email. Wire fraud is definitely very prevalent. So be careful getting your wire instructions. Okay, so you're gonna wire your funds over closing. So most closings take place here in Florida. We're a wet funding state. We use a lot of title companies. Sometimes it might be an attorney, but most of the time the closings I do are at title companies. Okay, so you walk into the title company. You're gonna have this big old stack of papers, and it's gonna be you walk in. You already have wired your funds. Okay, so you're not actually bringing money to closing. You're gonna wire it beforehand. So you're gonna walk in. You sit at a conference table and a big old pile of documents that's gonna be in front of you. Basically, they say that yes, I will pay back the mortgage.
That's as good as money, sir. Those are IOUs.
And I didn't commit fraud on this mortgage. That's in a few sentences. That's basically what all that big old stack means. Now, your FHA loans and VA loans are going to be bigger because there's other disclosures that have to be signed on FHA and VA loans. For the most part, it's a fairly large stack of disclosure documents that have to be signed. Some things you might have already signed at initial application, but you have to re-sign at closing, or it's a term called consummation. So it doesn't mean what you think it means. That's what the government calls it. It's consummating your mortgage. So, by then, so you can come in, you're going to sign a bunch of documents, okay? And then at the end, you're done, right? Not quite. So there is what's called a fund. There's a signing and a funding. So you're going to come in, you're going to sign all those documents. The closer's going to take that package and then submit it for funding approval. Now, at this time, all of your funds have been placed in a big old pot called the escrow. Okay, so you're going to have your funds. The lender's going to wire their mortgage, and the seller's going to do their closing costs. Basically, all this money going into this big pot, and then the escrow officer then writes checks to everybody. I get paid, and then the realtors get paid, and seller gets paid, and then you get your house. That's kind of how it works. But in order to authorize funding, because by that time the wire has already been sent from the mortgage company, in order to to have the funds there. So the money's there, just to have the authorization to release it. You have to make sure that the deed is correct. One of the things that you're gonna be signing is a transfer of ownership as well. Make sure the deed is correct. Make sure all of the initials are there. And I've had mortgages go to recording with initials missing. So it is an issue. So they do their best to do a final check, make sure everything's initialed and signed and correct, and they do any kind of corrections while you're there to make sure that the funding package is 100% correct. So it'll go to your county recorder to make sure that is correct. So once you come in, you sign, and then you get funding approval, and sometimes funding approval can take quite a while. It all depends on how backed up they are, where that funding department is. So we do our best to kind of keep everybody in the loop, to make that process from signing to funding as easy as possible, as short as possible rather. So sometimes, unfortunately, you have to hang out at the title company and wait for funding approval, but the title company legally cannot release those keys to you until you have funding approval. And ideally, we have most most of our clients would basically come in and sign fund maybe an hour later, if that. I've had some happen on a weekend where I put some clients up at a hotel and they say, hey, it didn't fund. I mean, they had trucks packed, so this is how these things happen. And it's not ideal, but I make sure we take care of our clients, and I was able to give them a nice little hotel stay and while they're waiting for funding. Hey, have fun at the hotel, and then they sign on Monday, and then they funded it. And this is a VA loan, a veteran. I'm definitely gonna make sure my veterans are taken care of. So that's kind of it in a nutshell about what happens at closing. You wire funds, come in, sign, packet gets signed for funding. You're a new homeowner. Okay, so right here is another video about buying a house. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you want more information about buying a house, mortgages, and things like that, definitely go to my website. I'll see you on the next one.